Did you know that there's a woman who not only turned down Henry VIII, but also burnt him by telling the truth to his special envoys? I'm sure that you've learned, and we know, the 6 wives of Henry VIII. We also know the other women he pursued, notably, and I'm not sure actually, but Marie de Guise, the mother of Mary Stuart. And she said, my neck is too small. So she was really not interested, and Henry VIII was getting a very bad reputation all across Europe. But this woman, what she did goes much further. And more interestingly for us, we have an amazing scene in the Tudors, the TV show, season 3, where we have a representation of how she turned him down and burnt him. Shall we dive in?
Is it not strange that the King's Majesty was in so little space rid of his 3 queens? And they suspect that the first, my great aunt, was poisoned.
So here we're talking about Christina of Denmark, who was Duchess of Milan. Not a small title at the time. She was actually born in November 1521 and died on the 10th December 1590. She was a Danish princess and the younger surviving daughter of King Christian II of Denmark and Norway and Isabella of Austria, which meant that she was related to Catherine of Aragon. By her 2 marriages, she became Duchess of Milan, then Duchess of Lorraine. These 2 duchies were very, very powerful and important at the time. You have to realize here that it was not a small alliance to find an alliance with Milan or Lorraine. So, and the fact that she had so much royal blood from different European dynasties, she was a big prize. Henry VIII pursued her. It was an option after the death of Jane Seymour. And here she's basically discussing the fact that he had 3 wives. And that's kind of not unheard of. It's the way he had 3 wives, right? Arguably, none of them really died of natural circumstances because people believe that Catherine of Aragon might have been poisoned. I don't believe it's true, but some people did. So if you look at poison and then obviously what happened to Anne Boleyn and then how she has the perception of what happened to Jane Seymour, it's so very interesting how she's depicting, the way she sees Henry VIII to his special envoys.
The second, innocently put to death.
And I love it here. Innocently put to death. Thank you. Thank you to the showrunners here for finally showing that Anne Boleyn was not guilty. And in this show, it's quite annoying because Anne Boleyn is massively... Natalie Dormer does an incredible job. I really love her as Anne Boleyn. At the same time, she's massively sexualized. There are some hints that she's a bit too flirtatious and stuff. So I really hated that in the show and I really resented them for doing that. But that line made me forgive them, I think.
And the third, lost for lack of care in her childbed.
So here, that's very interesting take on Jane Seymour's death. Some people believe that there was a lack of care when she gave birth, after she had given birth. And so here it shows neglect. It shows that Henry VIII is probably the worst husband you could have, that he just kept disrespecting his wives. And in many ways, what he did to Catherine of Aragon is so humiliating, so disrespectful. Then how he went after Anne Boleyn is so disgusting itself. And here she's also saying, well, Jane Seymour was not really better treated. She should have had better care after giving birth to Edward. And I think that's a very, very interesting take. And that also goes into the discussion about if Henry VIII was in love with Jane. Do you really believe that if you're in love with someone, you're not going to try to give them the best care?
Frankly, sir, if I had 2 heads, then one would be at His Majesty's service. Alas, I have only this one.
Okay, that's an amazing, 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 amazing line. Why? Because it's more or less historically accurate. So let's see what actually the real Christina of Denmark said. She's reported of saying, "If I had two heads, I would happily put one at the disposal of the King of England." So it's very close to what they did. It just made it a bit more explicit. And I do like it. Because here it's very bold. And also it's very close to what Marie de Guise also, the reason why she turned down as well, Henry VIII, saying that her neck was too small. So here you see that these women, these noble women, the news of Henry VIII being a bad husband, being a bad king, being not treating his queens and wives the right way, had basically traveled all over Europe. They all knew about it. You almost think, what? For what reason? Like Anne of Cleves said yes. And here, then you realize how much pressure she must have felt from her brother and how much in charge of the negotiations he was. Because when you look at the women who actually had a say and where their male relatives in their lives could not push them to do anything they didn't want, also that shows you agency, and that's a very, I think, interesting point. Well, the fact that the male relative just despised, Henry VIII and didn't see a political alliance, you could argue both ways. But you see that it is kind of shocking how Henry VIII treated his wives. And he had this bad reputation. And it's not just Christina who said it, it's also Marie de Guise. So I think it's a very, very interesting scene, and I absolutely love it.
Madam, let me plead my master's better qualities and appeal to your heart.
No, you must not labor any further, for I shall not fix my heart that way.
Okay, so here she's just not convinced. And she's also telling him off, like she's not interested in knowing anything about the king because she knows enough on how he treated his wives. And that is kind of true as well.
Unless, of course, the emperor commands me to.
And you really think here that Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, will command one of his nieces, force her to marry Henry VIII? That is pretty clear here, that is not gonna happen. But what actually happened in history, let's see. Historically, here's what happened. She became Duchess of Milan in 1533 when she married Francesco II Forza, Duke of Milan. Unfortunately for her, or fortunately, he's going to die in October 1535, leaving her as a widow when she was 13, so quite very young. The duchy was incorporated with the empire, and that's where it was going to create problems with, obviously, France. In October 1537, Christina went to live at the court of her aunt, the governor of the Low Countries, Dowager Queen Mary of Hungary. And here we have a very strong bond with all the Habsburg and how they treated, regardless of how, their other alliances and allegiances through marriages. She's very much, and despite her father being Danish, she's very much an Habsburg and very close to this side of family. And I find it very interesting because you see the Habsburg, how they looked after one another in a very compelling and fierce way. After the death of Jane Seymour, Christina was considered as a possible bride for the English king. Holbein himself was sent to paint her portrait. In March 1538, Holbein arrived in Brussels to make the portrait with a diplomat, Philip Hobby, to meet Christina. And that's Philip Hobby that we have here. Christina sat for the portrait for 3 hours wearing morning dress, and that's the portrait we have of her here that we can see, and how pious she is. And she's not obviously trying to show herself as an attractive woman. Christina was then only 16 years old, and she made very clear that she didn't want to marry the English king, and that is in our primary sources. The truth is, Mary of Hungary was also not very enthusiastic about a marriage prospect between Christina and Henry VIII. So that in a way that helped that all the people who had lots of importance, lots of political influence, lots of political agency, were also against the match. Actually, Henry pursued the marriage until January 1539, when it was clear that that would not happen, that Christina would not marry Henry under any circumstances. In the end, Christina obviously refused to marry Henry VIII, and in 1541 she will marry Francis, Duke of Bar, who would later succeed his father as Duke of Lorraine. And in that way, being Duchess of Lorraine meant that she became very close to the Guise family and all the politics around it. She's a very fascinating woman that I think is too often overlooked in 16th century politics. But I think we need to remember her as the woman who said no to Henry VIII in those words. And I really love the fact that for once we have in that show such a powerful, powerful, powerful scene with a woman standing up for herself and calling out Henry VIII for his bad behaviour and for what he did to his wives. Let me know in the comments if you knew about Christina and what you think of that scene, and if you want more of these kind of snapshot and windows into the past through historical fiction. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!